everyone. Thank you again for our monthly DEI, which is Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion panel discussion. This month is, of course, Black History Month, and we happen to fall on a very special week, which is International Networking Week. So we decided to combine the two and make this panel talk go national, or sorry, international. So I'm excited. And we have a fantastic panel here today. We are really, really excited to be with everyone. I cannot wait for you all to hear from this panel. Like, I feel so lucky that we were able to get everybody to be on at the same time. So I'm just overjoyed for all of you to get to know some of our absolutely profound Black leaders in BNI. My name is Claudia Thompson. I am the head of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion panel for BNI US. And I am also the senior launch coach up in the Northeast. I have to give a shout out to launch every single time. So that is Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. All right. And I might even have a launch right now. So we have amazing panelists, as I said. I'm going to actually introduce each one at a time, and then they're going to just tell us just in a few sentences, you know, some of their background, what they do for BNI, and if they've been a part of BNI, what that journey was. So I'm actually going to start with Mr. George Barlow.
Hey, thank you so much, Claudia. Glad to be here. I'm so happy that you've asked me to be on this panel. What an honor and what a privilege it is to be here today amongst this stellar, with this stellar group here today. So I'm like, again, my name is George Barlow. I am director and head of global franchise development for BNI. I've been with BNI for almost a year. Next month, it will be 1 year. And I've spent the last 27 years in real estate, and 21 of those 27 years have been in franchise development, and worked all over the country, worked in Mexico as well. And my job at BNI is to go into new countries, develop those new countries, and help our master franchisees in those new countries expand their territories. So that's just a little bit about myself.
Fantastic. What a background. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, George. All right, up next, I have Mr. Shaliver Sprosta. Pretty sure I said his name right, his last name. And he is our US HR manager. So Shaliver, why don't you please share?
Well, thank you very much. And I have to echo the same sentiments that George mentioned there. It feels like it's All-Star Weekend being amongst the panel here. So I'm very glad and very privileged to be sitting amongst you all, and also to be participating with those that are watching this live or, you know, in the tape session. So my name is Shaliver Sprosta. I've been with BNI since December, so I'm relatively new here. But I've been working in HR and HR-related fields for more than a decade, and that includes compliance, diversity. So I've got a storied background, and I've got a history that's filled with different industries, and I love coming in here to be a force for change among the U.S. core, and I look forward to working along with all of you here, as well as those that are watching as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Shaliver. I think you are the newest member to the BNI family, and we are really excited to have you.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. So I'm going to kick it to LeBrent, and then I'm going to end with Moji, because I know Moji has like a wild story from the beginning. So LeBrent, so please tell us, you know, what it is that you do in BNI, how long you've been a member, and some of your background.
Yes, well, thank you, Claudia, for asking me to do this, and I do feel very pleased and honored to be a part of this panel. It's exciting to be able to talk about these things, and hopefully bring some context and light for others who are watching and listening later. As Claudia said, my name is LeBrent Speed. I'm the managing director of BNI Minnesota and Northern Wisconsin. So my role is to really support chapters and chapter success coaches in the Minnesota and Northern Wisconsin region for BNI, and helping them maximize their business and their membership in BNI. I originally joined BNI in 2005. And when I was a reiteration of another business and was in there for a couple of years, loved it, and ended up leaving that business. And, so I left my BNI chapter and then joined again in 2017 or 17, I believe. And it was the connection, to be able to build relationships. I'm still friends with some of the people from 2005, and it's really nice to be a part of it. And so when this opportunity came up, I really wasn't fully aware of what a person in my role did, but learning more about it, it just seemed like it fit what I do and what I've been doing. I'm also a ordained minister and, have a nonprofit. So I really have been involved with networking, connecting. I believe BNI is the pinnacle of networking and connecting people.
I would second that. Thank you so much. Yes, it's been a while now. We've been working together for almost like a year and a half or whatever it's
Yes.
been. So yeah, it's been a wild ride. So thank you so much, LeBron. And of course, Moji from Canada. So please share with us your journey up until this point, some of your background as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Claudia, for bringing us all together. And like everyone has said before me, I want to acknowledge that this is truly an honor to be here amongst such amazing people. My BNI story began in 2006. I often say to people, I decided to purchase a business in a moment of temporary insanity. You're going to have to buy me coffee to hear the rest of that story. But long story short, somebody introduced me to BNI, and so I joined as a member, and very quickly realized that, like any other system, you have to work the system in order to make it work. My chapter that I was a part of dwindled very quickly, and I was eventually approached by a national director at the time, and he said, I think you could help run BNI in Southern Alberta, because at the time we didn't have anybody who ran it. And I looked at him and I was like, do I look like I need a job? Anyway, obviously, Don Morgan saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And he just began to coach me and to mentor me. And eventually in 2011, we made the plunge, my husband and I, to purchase BNI in Southern Alberta. We started with 70 members at the time. We're just shy of 600 at this point and still growing strong. I'm very, very excited. I love what I do. Actually, if I may tell a quick story.
Please do.
I arrived. I am right now in Costa Rica, so I'm not I'm not home in Canada, to help a friend of mine whose son is getting married here officiate a Yoruba ceremony, which is, I'm originally from Nigeria and we're Yorubas, and they got stuck because they are looking for somebody to provide live feed for the event, and they're like, we don't even speak the language, we don't know where to go. I said, let me make a call. I called Steve, who's the national director for BNI in Costa Rica. He's like, tell me what you need. And he's setting me up. I get emotional as I think about that, because I haven't been on the ground 24 hours. And my family and my friends are already benefiting from the value that BNI brings to us all. So anyways, I could go on and on and on. This is an amazing organization. I'm thankful for the privilege to be here.
I love it. I love hearing stories like that, Moji, of course. That is fantastic. So thank you, all of you, so much for those great introductions. We're going to jump right into our first question. So the theme of Black History Month, and that, by the way, is the official logo and the website. So for those of us in the US, blackhistorymonth.gov. And so, although I believe Canada celebrates Black History Month as well. So the theme this year, which I think is so fitting, right? We hear a lot of what's happening in the news. A lot of us just in general of taking care of our health and our wellness, right? So, what are some of the ways that you all keep yourself healthy, both physically and mentally? So I'm going to start. Does anyone want to go first?
I'd be happy to.
Sure.
I find personally that this is a part of me that has to be healthy in order for me to bring the best version of myself to my clients. So I do invest significantly in making sure that I'm healthy. And I'll tell you, it starts with something as simple as sleep. When I first started in this role, I felt like the harder I worked, the more productive I would be. And I would go, days without, maybe with 3, 4, 5 hours of sleep. And I've learned that I need my complete 8 hours in order to bring the fullness of myself to my clients and that. So that's just one area. I do work out with a shout out to Tamara Jarrett, who is my personal coach. I find that accountability helps me just be consistent. Every time I've gone off and tried to do it on my own, it didn't really last that long. So that's something else I do. And I really work hard on eating healthy, because again, we can only bring to the table what it is, who we are, right, as business owners. So those are 3 things that come to my mind: sleep, working out, and eating well.
Oh, that's my list. You took my list. Fantastic. All right. So I'm gonna jump to LeBrent Speed, because he was just telling us a little bit. I'm not gonna embarrass you. I'm gonna let you tell what you've been doing as of late, but I want people to know what it is that you do for your health and wellness.
Well, thank you, Claudia. And as some of you may know, Claudia's what we call super healthy, and so she's a super healthy person. And so what I would, being in this job for a year, there are a lot of different strains, and we all have dealt with different things during this, coronavirus. And I just really knew that it was time to take care of my health. And so I really got a health coach over the last 3 or 4 months or so, 3.5, 4 months. And I've really been focused on working out every day, eating right. Currently, I'm down about 45 pounds, and goal is to lose another 50 or so or more. And so I just really know that in order for us, we talk about health is wealth. And so it's important for our health and ourselves to be aligned with what we want. And I say, and mentally, I would also encourage us to take time every morning before I check emails or anything. I have like my own time, like a mental time before I do anything, to read and to write and to just reflect. And I think before we jump on text message or social media to hear the latest news, I live in Minneapolis, so there's always a lot of latest news here. I refuse to ingest stuff before I build my mind up. So I think that's important to also take care of your mind as well as your body.
Fantastic. Well, congrats on all the hard work that you've been putting in. Thanks for the shout out of me being super healthy. That was a dig for everyone to know. It was a dig and it wasn't, but it's all right. It's all right. I'm gonna live to 125. All right. I don't know if George or Shalivar have anything to add to any of these other. Yeah.
Yes, I'll throw in something here. First of all, LeBrent, congratulations on your weight loss of 45 pounds. That's fantastic. Moji, if I can get 8 hours of sleep, man, that would just be fantastic. When I lay my head down, it takes me 2 hours just to fall asleep, because I don't know what that is, because I've been like that ever since I've been a child. But to piggyback on what LeBrent said is that I first wake up and I take that time out before I even look at any social media, look at my phone, and I take some time out. I enjoy working out my mind, my body, and my soul. I work out 5 days a week. I have a faith-based belief system. I keep my mind active by reading, and I enjoy expanding my understanding of the Spanish language as well. So I continue to, work on that. So that's.
Yes, we did have a little exchange in Spanish when we were speaking, so that's good. That they always say to learn a new language, right? It kind of like does different things in your brain. Yes, thank you. And Shalivar, I want to know what you're doing.
Absolutely. I mean, I wish I can get 8 hours of sleep a day. So Moji, whatever you are doing, please pass the secret recipe on to the rest of us to do so, to be able to rest. And just like George mentioned there, sometimes I'm also in my bed and my mind is still going. And I have to consciously just kind of put it to rest. And, I rely a lot on my faith-based system and my support system, meaning my family and my friends, in order to really talk through some of those things. But I'm going to get a little profound in this question, because one of the things that I have learned this year is that self-determination is a huge part of my mental and emotional well-being. And when I say self-determination, what I'm describing is not being all things to all people.
Mm.
And we've come into a system and a society where you have to be, or it's chartered upon you to be more than what you feel comfortable in. And sometimes that is a weight that you are carrying, you know, like Atlas is carrying the world on his shoulders sort of deal. And I've basically said to myself, I can't be, because I can't live up to everyone's expectations. I can't live up to the words and thoughts of other people. I have to be my own person. And when I started doing that and started coming into that realization, it really helped me to be secure in who I was and who I am now. And it's encouraged me to become even better than who I was yesterday. So that to me is one of the biggest things that I started with. And of course, you know, diet and exercising is a must, but also improving my relationships with my family, my friends, and my neighbors has also been paramount to me, because those sorts of connections really impact who I am as a person. We're all created to be social beings. And you know,
Yes.
we have to nurture those relationships. And you know, if we can go back to one of our core values is relationship building, you know, building those relationships. So as a whole, I have to maintain those relationships, and honestly, I have to do a better job at maintaining those relationships. And the last point I would make on that is to be more socially conscious and aware of what's going on. And you know, all too often you're in your own pocket of the universe, whether it's your geographic, or it might be your faith base, or politics, or whatever it might be. And so I'm making a more concerted effort to be more connected, but still keeping parameters on that, so that I'm not overly you know, immersed in everything that's going on.
Yeah. I think we call that protecting your peace, Shaliver.
Yes.
That's very much so yes, while I am a runner and all of those things, LeBrent, and I don't eat anything but air and grass, Corey's on this call, as many people like to joke. I really do find, I mean, it does nurture your body. Two things I want to say. I want to say that about protecting your peace, because we do get in a cycle. And I think it is relevant to us being Black people, that we feel we always have to do more, right? Just in general. And there's a great Instagram account that I follow, Nat Ministry, and it's about Black people celebrating themselves by getting rest. And so I 100%, yeah, and my son is in college too, so yeah, I get it. I can get more sleep as well. Moji joked in the chat that's because her kids are not in the house. And it's still important to even pass that on to the youngsters, to let them know it is okay to rest. And I think for myself, I just go. And the last year and a half, quite frankly, because I work remotely, I've had more time to practice that self-care and protecting my peace by getting some rest when I need it, so that I'm really charged up for the day. So I wanted to bring that in. Now, just curious if anyone is reading anything, or has read anything recently, any books pertaining to what we're talking about now, or just in general, anything related to professional or personal development. Are you into fiction? Just curious what people are reading right now.
Well, I want my answer in that. I would say that that's part of my mental health. In the morning, I read for about an hour a day. Now, beyond it, like even as I'm faith based, so I have some spiritual readings first, but then I'll read an hour outside of that. And three books really stand out for me. Maybe I should have done this when I was in college, but I recently read Frederick Douglass' book and Booker T. Washington, Up from Slavery. I recently read those, and it really blew my mind that we understand what systematic oppression looks like. We can't hide away from the fact that we deal with that, but to understand what they went through. And yet, when I read Frederick Douglass, it makes me feel like I graduated the 4th grade. And this dude literally taught himself to read because he basically manipulated other children to teach him to read. And from those kernels of knowledge, he became this literary giant. And I believe if Frederick Douglass at his time, with what he had and the resources available to him, could learn to read and write at such a level that makes me feel like, with all the education I've had, private school education, tutors and all this other stuff, made me feel like I barely graduated high school. He took what he had and made it great. And I believe it's an example to me when I read Booker T. Washington and Frederick Douglass. about taking what you have and making it great, because systems are made for groups of people, but they never can contain people who want to be outstanding. And I think it's really it's incumbent us to try to do our best to be excellent, not be, as Sholiver say, being everything to everyone, but knowing our lane and working that lane to death.
I muted myself, but fantastic, fantastic. I love that, LeBrent. I love that. Anyone else reading anything recently? I know there's a lot of good books out there. Yes, Moji?
Well, one that I'm working on right now is called The Coaching Habit by Michael Stainer. And so what I'm finding is, with the last 2 years being the way they have, I'm learning more and more that working with BNI in my role as an executive director with our members, that it actually involves a lot of coaching. And I figured I wanted to sharpen my skills in that area. And it's just been an incredible resource. The thing I love about this book is it also is applicable in business, obviously, but it's the same in life and in relationships. I love what Sholiver was sharing with us earlier about building relationships. And so he talks about 7 critical questions that we should, are you nodding because are you familiar with the book? Yeah, it's an amazing one. And he talks about really having conversations that truly help us create transformation in people's lives. So if you're looking to really make an impact in the people that you work with, I'm one of those people. I'm very quick to give advice. He's like, hold back a little bit and help them find it within themselves, because if you ask the right questions, you can help people get to that point. And I just, like you all, I read a lot, and I'm finding that I don't have time to read good books anymore. The books I read have to be great books. And it's one of those books that has like 5,000 reviews on Amazon, and it's got like 4.9 on the review scale. So love it. Highly recommend it.
Fantastic. Awesome. George or Sholiver, are you reading anything or have read anything recently?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I would tell you that I get my hands on a lot of self-help books, and more in the sales arena. I've read Spin Selling by Neil Rackman, Hope is Not a Strategy by Rick Page, and these are kind of rereads again. I love a lot of C.S. Lewis stuff, and just recently read The 4 Disciplines of Execution as well. So
a BNI favorite, absolutely.
A BNI favorite.
Yeah. A BNI favorite, without a doubt. Yes, fantastic. Sholiver, how about yourself?
Definitely. I am, I can't say I'm an avid reader, but I'm always reading. I don't know if that makes sense, but I've raised my daughters to be readers and to enjoy the power that comes with reading. And that's something that LeBrent alluded to. And one of those things that we always went to Barnes and Nobles and sit down and, spend like half a day to a whole day there. And so the reading for me is fundamentally important, because it allows you to not only gain knowledge, but it's also a great way to exchange ideas, and also a great way to just be outside of yourself at any given point in time. But one of the books that I've been reading for years, and I'm being honest there with this one, is Peace from Broken Pieces by Inyala Van Sant. And it is a tremendous book for anyone that has not read this book. Please, by all means, go out and be prepared for, to be smacked in the face, as it were, proverbially. This book really speaks about patterns and pathologies families pass on from generation to generation. And we're not just talking about genes and genetics, but we're also talking about traumas, memories, expectations, and behaviors. And to see how those books, see this book and how it is that we might pass on an expectation to our families, it is really something that has caused me to stop at so many times, to stop reading the book, because I had to process what was being said in the book at that time, and then learn to change my behavior as a result of what it is I encounter. And so for me, that is that's the one book I have to say I'm continuously reading. But I'm always reading because I'm in school now, so pursuing my second degree. So I'm most of my reading now is more academic in nature.
Absolutely, yes. So there was a request that I was going to make. Thank you so much, Jody. If you wouldn't mind each of you putting in the chat those books that you had mentioned. And then there's other books that people had mentioned as well in the chat. Yes, he did bring up Queen Iyanla. Goodness, I can always say her name. Yes. So that's good to know that Chalaver's out here reading her, because she is fantastic for sure. Okay, so we're going to move on from this. And now we're going to talk a little bit about career, and we're going to go a little deeper. And I want to know specifically, do you think gender or skin color has made more of an impact on your professional life and career? Okay, so I would love to hear first from LeBrent.
Well, this is a great question. I didn't know you guys would ask this question, but I'm glad you did. I think it's difficult to say that if you're a person of color that this doesn't impact your professional career. I think, most professional African Americans and people of African descent that I know, when they go to a workplace, it feels as if they always, they've consistently had people who are above them who are less than competent. And I think everyone can relate to this. I think that's why so many people like to show The Office. But I think for us, we definitely can relate to this. And so it'd be difficult for me. I had several bosses, directors who told me, one told me specifically, you should be running this. When I worked at another company, you should be running this whole department. My boss told me, can you help me run this department, because you definitely are more qualified than me. Now I'm thinking they could have just gave me the job. And so that has happened to me several times. And I think we can't act as if that doesn't happen. I think the question is what the mindset we go through, or what we take on when we go through that process. We can sit around complaining about it. It's real. It happens. But the question is, what do we do with that information? So yes, it has impacted me. And I think I've chosen to say, well, how can I maneuver? How can I get in better places so I can overcome this situation?
Yeah, no, that's really great advice, LeBrent. I definitely agree. I think a lot of us have felt in that situation where we felt like, hey, we're not up for this opportunity. We're not given the chance for the opportunity, or they want to take the jewels and the nuggets from us, but not actually give us the chance to lead the team or lead that department. And so that's a really good point that you make. Anyone else want to add to this or answer this question? I'll take from one more person. Yes.
If you don't mind, I would
Not at
actually
all.
say gender has been more of a factor for me than has skin color. Partly because I grew up in Nigeria, where we were mostly Black people, so it wasn't an issue so much. But I studied civil engineering in university. I was in a class of 120, of which 6 of us were girls, and the rest were guys. First of all, the girls knew we were fighting an uphill battle. We always knew that we had to work twice as hard as the guys in order to even show up at the table or be given a room at the table, much less, move on from there. But what really struck with me was how so it was a 5-year engineering degree. All 5 of us girls graduated, whereas we had guys who, for some reason or the other, and that's all up to them, who didn't. But those women are all doing phenomenal things in their different places around the planet right now. And I'm so incredibly proud of them. But again, it's that whole concept of we had to work hard. We just knew we couldn't cut the breaks, that the guys had. And this was in a predominantly Black society as well. So there's validity to both of these factors.
Absolutely. I mean, we have a talk in May, which is on intersectionality, right? Which is the different intersections and identities and how that plays a role, right? So but what you're speaking to, because I mean, and you were again, in a more homogenous setting as far as race goes, but then when there was that power dynamic of male or female, males clearly dominated, right? Something that a lot of us here, and we'll talk about that next month at the women's talk that we're going to have. But definitely, I agree. But I do think that race does play a role as women, in particularly in this country. I know maybe it's slightly less in Canada, but I know that Canada has their share of issues too. But I definitely believe that being a Black woman kind of knocks us pegs down compared to a Black man as far as opportunities that are given. So
I would agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
even in Canada, it's not that much different, I don't think.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to jump to the other question. If either of you want to kind of tie this question into it, that's fine. But there is something called colorism. So for those that don't know, colorism is essentially having privilege with your proximity to whiteness. So the lighter skin that you are, you have more privilege. And we see this a lot. In particular, I know myself and Shaliver of Caribbean backgrounds. I'm also of Latin descent as well. And I find that happens heavily in those areas, right? Where there's more praise for the lighter skinned people. So I'm curious, has colorism been a major factor throughout your professional life? And then how has being Black impacted your career path? So
Yeah.
Yes, George, you can go ahead, and then I would love to hear from Shaliver as well.
Yeah, sure. Look, at the question is, has colorism been a major factor throughout my career, look at my professional life? I would say I don't believe so, but I can't say 100% for sure. However, let me mention this to you. I don't look for it. I have never allowed my skin color or my skin tone to hold me back from being me. Okay. This is me. This is George. And this is George every single day, right? So I make sure to present myself in a professional manner so that if someone had a problem with me, it couldn't be because I wasn't professional, right? Now, I hope that makes sense. Now, with that said, if they actually have a problem with my skin color, whether it be explicit or implicit, that's on them. That's not on me. It's on the organization in which they represent. Now, has it played a factor? I'm pretty sure probably it has, but I don't look for it. I'm me. I'm going to be professional.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. And Shaliver.
I have a lot to say on this one.
I know you do. I know you do. I would love
This one is very dear to me because for those that don't know, within a Caribbean background, there is a lot of emphasis that's placed on your complexion. So the shade of your melanin in your skin, which is to me just one of those. This is something that you were born into. It's not something that you can necessarily make too much darker, through just sitting in the sun. But you can. All right, let me take a step back here. There is a history within the Caribbean community that the lighter that you are, the better it is that you are. And that could mean intelligence, that could mean your looks, and especially beauty products have been catered towards this within the Caribbean community. So much so that, like me, I'm the lighter of my siblings. Both of my sisters are darker complexion. My father was darker than me as well, but my mother is one of those individuals that if she were walking the streets in the 1950s and 60s and 70s could have passed for white. So for me, I was born with this complexion as a result. Now, when I have gotten one thing I have to say before that, I was also raised with a very British background. So I had, when I emigrated to the United States, I had much more of the British dialect and mannerisms than I have right now. And so when I spoke, I was being termed as, are you trying to be white? Why are you sounding white? And that was just within individuals that look just like me. So, this idea of colorism exists because at some point in time, we've allowed either society or our own prejudices to say, this is better, this looks better because, you're lighter, you're darker. I love the fact that my daughters are across the gambit in terms of their complexion. My wife is a beautiful Black woman. And I have, just family that are all shades and all colors. And I have, history that's a family history that's among white, Black, and different types of native tribes within South America. And I celebrate all that because to me, that makes you a whole person. But it's unfortunate that within our own communities, we see that the lighter that you are, the better that you are in some capacity, when it shouldn't be that. And it has impacted my career path, and that's just kind of going to your next question, because for me, I've received those microaggressions, which is something that we're going to talk to as well. I received those microaggressions from individuals within my own community, as well as externally. So that whole idea of, because you're lighter, you are not a field N-word, but you are a house N-word. You are not part of us because you don't look or sound like us. So, or being told, you have to talk Black versus, to me, what seems to be just regular English. So there are different ways that we can discriminate against one another, even within our own communities. And I'm going to put the kibosh on that and allow my fellow colleagues in this distinguished panel to contribute and add to that.
Yes, does anyone have anything to add or say? I know I definitely have a lot to say, but I'm not here for that. Anyone else have anything to add? Yes,
I just want to say thank you for the gift of, the more I listen to you all, the more I'm just so thankful and so blessed to be here. And I want to thank you for sharing that, Shilva, because it's not something that I have experienced at any shape, at any stage in my life, but as I'm hearing you, I'm going, that's wrong. And I say that because I have a little 2.5-year-old grandson who is just the love of my life. And he's mixed, right? His mom's white and his dad's Black. And I can see that what you're talking about could be Ruben's experience. I also have a Chinese son-in-law, and I'm starting to think to myself, what could their lives look like if we don't start to become aware of the kind of things that you're sharing? So I just want to publicly thank you for helping me understand that and just think about ways in which I may be perpetuating what it is that you're talking about. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, and to add to that too, because I have a biracial son, I've mentioned on this talk before, and he's 20, but he goes through his own struggles, right? And he presents as, most of the time, it looks like he's of Latin descent, right? He looks like he's Latin, but he's gotten all types of things: Italian, Greek, Asian. Some people don't usually know that he's Black 100% or even part of the way. So it's been interesting as well. And I think a lot of people think that we're just kind of, I don't think people realize there's a struggle, because my son struggles with it, but he also realizes that he has a privilege as well. And at the same time still gets discriminated against in other areas. So it's interesting. We could go on forever, and we might have a topic about this in the future. Because I even see it. I dance in a Bollywood group, which is based out of India. And even in India, you see this as well. Skin bleaching products and things like that. So this is something, thank you for sharing, Shalivar. Thank you, everyone. We're going to move on to the next conversation, which is, of course, B&I and networking. Hello, it's the B&I talk. So we want to know, which organizations do you belong to other than B&I or have belonged to? So any networking ones, because I know there's other folks on the call. That's one of the biggest things that I get. One of the biggest questions and requests is, how do I interact and engage with other people of diverse backgrounds, particularly Black people? I've had someone just say, we don't have anyone. I'd like to have more Black connections in the group. So are any of you, do you belong to any other organizations?
Yes.
Yes.
I belong to the National Black MBA Association, where the vision is to empower visionaries, if you will, intellectually and economically, to create a world where diversity and inclusion are universal. Also, I am a member of the IFA, as you know, the International Franchise Association. I'm a certified franchise executive. I'm also well connected with the NAR community, the National Association of Realtors. So those are just a few organizations that I'm connected with, I'm involved with. That's it right now. So
Fantastic. Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in?
Well, I have been, and I'm gonna get reconnected to it again, the Black Chamber of Commerce here in Minnesota. So I've been involved with that before, and then local chambers in this area. So I believe networking. I would say that I always gravitate, even though being a minority in BNI in Minnesota in particular, I always gravitate because at least there's order in BNI, and that I like. I find that when I go to other networking groups, I expect more organization. It's like, oh, this is not BNI, and so it somewhat throws me off a little bit because I feel like I've been so I because I'm naturally an introvert, so I love the red and blue. I like the structure. Sometimes other networking throws me off because there's no structure, and so I do encourage other people to get involved, learn how to do other things, and I think for those who are looking, as Corey said, I am a BNI snob, so.
Guilty.
Yes, I'm guilty of that. So what I would love to be able to do as I go into these other organizations to help them understand the value of BNI, because I think, as I grew up in certain private schools, so I had a lot of white friends. And one of the things I think is not networking isn't as valuable. We haven't learned culturally the value of networking as much. So that's one of the things I do because I believe that BNI offers so much, and I believe we could do better in terms of our diversity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would agree with that. Yes. Anyone else?
I just
Mine
wanted
are-
to add, sorry, go ahead.
No, by all means, Moji.
Yeah, go ahead, Mochi.
So I was speaking to one of our members not too long ago, and I said to them, what other networks do you belong to outside of BNI? And he said, I don't. And I thought, we kind of go into this box where it has to have a name in order for us to figure it out. So I happen to know that he was an ex-firefighter, and I have a daughter who's a police officer. And I know that when you're part of those families, you are part of it for life. So I'm like, do you still connect with your the other members of the firefighting community? And he's like, absolutely. I'm like, that's a network, right? And sometimes those spaces in which we network necessarily may not have a name per se, but if you have a strong presence in those places, it's like, oh my goodness, I never thought about it. That's a place where I network. And for me, my church community is a huge part of that. I'm on the leadership team for that. So again, for our members, think about it. Like my kids, for example, I have 4 children. They're older now, but when they were home, our house was like Grand Central Station. All their friends, were right there, and you never knew who was going to be in the house. That's a huge network for me. When all those kids need realtors, mortgage brokers, they need anything, guess who they come to? They know it's Mama Moji. She's got someone. And so think about those networks where you network, because they may not necessarily have, like a title, but they're part of your network and part of your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I 1000% agree with you on that. I mean, that's why I think that's one of the coolest things about BNI. It's like you always have someone, right? And we have a lot of someone's across the world, which is really cool. I'm going to ask for the other question, but Charlotte, you're going to add something, but if we can have the next question.
That'll be quick. I just want to be added to Moji's network because she's very well connected, and I need to have all those connections that she has.
Yeah.
But to those that are here, as well as those that are being on the panel, and those that are watching, definitely part of. I want to encourage you to be a part of the human resource management networks. So that'll be SHRM, HCI, as well as the National Association of African Americans in Human Resources. So by all means, please, I encourage you to do so. And one that I would love to get to be a part of is Boys to Men Mentoring Network. I sign up for their newsletters and stuff, but I really want to become at some point in time very active in mentoring some of our young men that are in need of that representation.
That's a singing group, isn't it?
Listen, George, I told you, leave the jokes to me, but yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, but Boys to Men is a fantastic organization on how to mentor. As a lot of times it's Black professional males who are helping with young men to come up the ranks. So we have a lot of versions of that here in Boston. So it's really fantastic. So I hope that you do get connected and engage in that for sure. or you get to audition and sing with the group. Right, George?
No, that
That's
one.
all
That's right. That's right.
That's right. So Shaliver, you had mentioned this term before, microaggressions, and I'm curious, how do you handle microaggressions, right? I think it's definitely fair to assume that we've all experienced microaggressions, but I could be wrong because we are not a monolith. But at either a networking events or in business, how have you handled those? Like, what are some good strategies that we can handle them?
Well, first, let's try to define this term as much as possible for those that are not aware of it, or better yet, try to give it an example so that it becomes more real. But as I mentioned, I've gotten you're very articulate.
Yes. Yes.
For what? In my head, it's like, for what? Or I don't see you as a person of color. Well, I'm appreciating the fact that where you want to go with this, but you're now choosing to not acknowledge that I am a person of color.
Right.
Other instances of being treated as a second-class citizen, such as I remember I started a job early on in my career, and someone approached me and thought I was a blue-collar worker versus a white-collar worker.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yes.
know, and if we want to really, peel the onion back on this one, very many young men, African American, Black and brown, if they're walking past someone and they start to clutch their purse or their wallet, you hear the car doors locking as you walk by, you're being followed around a store. Those are forms of microaggression. They may not be saying explicitly to you that I am uncomfortable with you as a person, or I'm uncomfortable with you as a Black person. I'm just uncomfortable. They're just saying it through their actions or through their words or how they might be wording certain things. So there are many ways that people are being microaggressive towards you. And, for me, it's one of those things that you can't, depending on the situation, you have to figure out a way to deal with it. One of those things I would say for it is to address it, if at all possible. So if someone says to you, you are articulate, sometimes I place them on the spot and saying, as compared to whom? Or what was your expectation?
And I'm so curious. Thank you, Shaliver, for that. I think I get triggered every time. So for those that don't know what a microaggression is, it's a subtle, sort of like indirect way of discriminating against someone, right? And they think, and a lot of times people, a lot of times it's not intentional, right? Like a lot of times people will believe that they are doing you a favor by saying, oh, I've heard, you're pretty for a Black girl, or the same thing, like, oh, you're so articulate, or, like, oh, wow, I wasn't expecting you to be this smart, or something that direct, but like very, like, oh, I just wasn't expecting this of you, just based off of what you look like, right? And so I think that a lot of times handling that in business, it's tough because you're tackling that. I mean, I think for myself, and again, Moji might be different, just speaking from a cultural perspective, but here in the United States, many other Black women, and again, I think colorism does play a role. The darker you are, the more aggressive you seem. So a lot of times I come off as an angry Black woman and I'm like, I am a teddy bear, but no one knows. And I tell dad jokes all day, but people assume that I'm like aggressive and I'm angry, and that I'm not good natured. And it's very hard to tackle those. So I know that a lot of us, I've had conversations with pretty much all of you, in dealing with some of these microaggressions, and it can be challenging, quite frankly, to combat that while also trying to do your job.
Can I mention something too, Claudia?
Absolutely, George.
I might agree with what's been said so far 100%, because I have experienced every single one of those things, right? But I'm going to take a little bit different spin here, if you don't mind. Sure. First, if someone acts in an unkind way, I mean, that's what I'm kind of thinking, microaggression is. I, first of all, will give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay. And say to myself, they just must be having a bad day, or, whatever the case may be. So, but the things that have been said so far, that you look good for a dark person, or you're articulate. Those are more explicit things. Now, I believe sometimes too, if we look for microaggressions, we'll find it, but it also depends on the situation. There are some people out there that if they're explicit about their microaggressions, then they may have had a certain type of upbringing or a troubling upbringing, and it's hard to fix or help correct something that's been long ingrained in someone's mind, right?
Mhm.
So my mom used to always tell me this, and she still tells me today, just kill them with kindness. That will hopefully teach them the biggest lesson.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I
I
would
mean,
like
I think, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, LeBron.
No, I was gonna, and someone I actually heard speak several years ago in Claudia's backyard in Harvard. He's Dr. Robert Livingston. I don't know if you guys have heard, but he speaks about microaggression. He's actually done a lot of research, and as George said, he actually talks about the research how it's ingrained culturally. Right? I've been doing public speaking and stuff of that nature since I was like 9 or 10 years old, debating since I was like 11. So to hear that you're different, why are you different, or yes, you speak so well. It is a trigger. I've seen some of the comments and it triggers. And I think one of the things I've learned as I've gotten older, as George says, is that we don't ignore that it's real. Like I don't believe that certain people walk around as if racism isn't real. That makes my faith strong. Well, I don't have to believe it. I'm in Minnesota. I can believe it's not cold outside when it's 20 below. That don't mean I'm running out here with no shirt on. That's crazy, right? What it does mean is that I protect my mind. And as Claudia said earlier, I protect my peace. And I don't let people keep throwing me off. And so, yes, those microaggressions, but I agree, we have to show up the best versions of ourselves. We have to be excellent and not focused, because ultimately, sometimes you're right, sometimes it comes from a nice place. Oh my God, you speak so well, LeBron. It's like, and I'm like, Shaliver, speak well for whom? Like, you know,
Right.
and so I think we have to gird our minds up, because we're like, I feel like sometimes we go into the battlefields of work as African Americans, and if our minds are protected, it's going to be less. We're not going to go home and be in a car angry, hitting the steering wheel, but we're going to have more healthy discussions and healthy ways of releasing that. So it doesn't diminish that they hurt. It just means that we got to figure out a way to be either, as Doris says, be kind, but understand where we're going from there. Because I think it's really important. We've all dealt with them. I dealt with them in BNI. Was one time they were having a discussion about ice fishing, and then they said, "Well, LeBron, I assume you don't understand what we're talking about." I'm like, I grew up in
That assumption
Minnesota.
to me would be correct because I'm a city girl, but I get
But
it.
I'm saying I
I
grew up
get
in
it.
Minnesota, so
Right.
I'm from
Right.
here. So you know, it's just the assumption was I'm black, and I didn't. And so I think
Yeah.
I just laugh, and I'm like, yes, I'm pretty familiar with. And
Yep.
so I just think we just got to move on. And at the end of this, you know, the other people, what's funny is when he's had that conversation, that person was completely oblivious. The people around him were like, what in the world? And then he said, LeBron, what do you do in BNI? I'm like, I'm the managing
Mhm.
director of Minnesota. And then he's like, oh. It's like, well, I'm just a guy first and foremost, so I don't think you should say it for anybody. So I think it's how we handle those things is really important.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was going to say, so Tina just said about golf, and I said this when I was on Dr. Meisner's podcast about that. Wow, the guys in my group will say, "Oh, a bunch of us went golfing," and I'm like, "I own clubs," and the assumption is that I don't golf, right? Because it could pick one, right, black or a woman, and so it's interesting. And I don't think, and I agree with you, George. It's not that we use it to hold us back. I think we're all very accomplished people here. It's just that there's still, it would be nice if people were educated more on these, and people are harmed by them, and people do get triggered by them. So I think it would be helpful if we can continue to educate. We have a question in the chat, and then we're going to jump to the last couple of questions because we are short on time. Hopefully everyone still stays with us. But Susan Goodsell says, how do I, as a white woman, address microaggressions when I hear them in a networking event or such, assuming I don't know the person well? So does anyone want to take that question? I'll take an answer from one.
Absolutely. I would
Yeah.
definitely love to tackle that one. And I would say, first and foremost, and if it is a BNI networking event, remember that you have the core values. And one of the things that you can do, for yourself is to continue to be a lifelong learner. Educate yourself and teach others about microaggression. You can pull that's a person aside and say, listen, something that you said earlier bothered me a bit here. Let me tell you what the history of this comment that you made and help bring you up to speed with it. I had a conversation earlier with a managing director, and we were talking about actually my country and the whole Jim Jones and the whole term of drinking the Kool-Aid. And she said to me that it was something that rubbed her the wrong way. And I said, you know what? That's something that I'm glad that she had that aside for me and say that it rubbed her the wrong way. And from that, you can build those relationships, which is also part of our core value. You can build that relationship on trust, support, and unity. And then that person can in turn go out and start advocating for others, which builds a positive attitude. And that helps us to be more respectful, be more kind. And then I would think, just in terms of our last core values, recognition is that we have to look within to understand our own implicit biases and prejudices, and then acknowledge anytime that we make progress. That to me starts to build accountability and putting our words into actions and admitting our wrongdoings, which to me translates into innovation and tradition, because we've acknowledged what the past is and we're moving towards the future. And if we all sum that up into a giver's gain, you're basically treating someone else how you want to be treated, as if you were in their shoes, not just treating them because you said, I'm still within this space and they're within that space. But if I am exactly as that person, how would I want to be treated in this circumstance? So I would give that as a recommendation.
Can I just say that was super impressive, and you only started in December and you memorized and you put all that together like that. That's really impressive.
He did. He did.
Yes, I agree. That was
We're clowning right now. That's okay.
No,
Yes,
no.
that's what we're doing. Okay. No, it was impressive, Shaliver. Thank you. And incorporating core values. Look at you. That was fantastic. We do have one more series of questions, and then I want to try to get into Q&A. We're going to go a little bit over, if that's okay, because seems to be outstanding. Probably could do about 5 or 10 minutes over. So the next steps, right? We want to talk about, we want people to have some takeaways here, right? And this might answer Holly's question in the chat. So if you wouldn't mind, let's see, the first one is, how can we attract more Black prospective members to BNI and provide a space of inclusiveness for existing ones? So Moji, I would love to hear this. And then whoever was going to go next, maybe it's George. So I'll go to Moji first.
I say it starts with just having conversations like the one we're having. There's something about this space that has just felt extremely safe for me. And I want to go back to when Claudia first reached out to me, I was like, how did you even get permission to have this conversation in BNI? And I've been in this organization close to 20 years. So thank you. And I think it's about having these conversations and about being intentional about doing that and starting to intentionally invite Black professionals into this organization. And I'm not asking anybody to go and do it. I'm telling you what I need to begin to do in my space. I want to see more Black women around me in this organization in roles similar to mine, and all different roles wherever we may be. And so again, thank you for creating the space to do this.
Yeah, here. I might like to second that. Thank you, Claudia, for giving us this platform to be able to speak freely. And this is very, very liberating, if you will. Let me just tell you about this thing right here. When you talk about attracting more Black prospective members to BNI and provide a space, I mean, I'm just not talking about members, but you probably had another question very similar to this, but it's like recruiting Black people, like candidates. And I might think one way to do that is to intentionally attend schools, especially HBCUs and other minority groups and institutions, to make sure we're posting job opportunities or things like membership into BNI for those well-qualified candidates there, attend job fairs and the like, and purposefully seek out those that might be a good fit, right? The key is that this must be done with intent, right? Look at what's happening right now in the National Football League. right? With Brian Flores firing just happened. And I don't want to get into the Rooney Rule. Some of you probably know what the Rooney Rule is, but there's 32 teams right now in the National Football League and just one Black head coach. Now I believe there's two with the hiring of Lovie Smith, you know, like in Houston. When you look at the overall, or you look at the ownership of those 32 teams, 30 of those teams are white owners. And the other two, one is an Asian American, the other one is a Pakistani American, not one Black owner. So it starts from the top and then it works its way down, right? So I think that it's important for us to be represented. And there you go.
That I love it. I love you didn't get on my team, which is good. So thank you. People try to hate on my Giants, but that's okay. Yeah, no, but that's a good point. And of course, what specific actions would you suggest to attract and retain Black and other POC professionals, people of color in BNI? And I'd say in the hiring realm, Shalvar, since you are the HR professional here, I would love to know, like, what do you see? And George already kind of touched on it, which I think is fantastic about recruiting, but I'd love to know if you have any other strategies or actions.
Well, you know, first and foremost, I appreciate George mentioning the football there, and the idea of reaching out to those historically Black colleges as well. I would also add, you reach out to those Hispanic serving institutions as well. This is not just a BNI issue. This is an issue that's prevalent for industry in total, I would say, first and foremost. And if we want to, Graham had a call the other day, and he said he wanted to improve our recruiting. And that, to me, goes back to where our members are. Because ideally, for any organization, the best thing to do is to promote within, right? So you gain a buy-in as a result of that. So if we start looking at our members, where are our members traditionally? Are they in suburbia? Probably, most likely. So I think one of the things that we need to do in terms of our approach would be to get into more inner city markets. And as we do that, we begin to see the change in terms of people that are represented within each of those groups there. And then as they begin to take leadership roles, it becomes more of a visibility and accountability. And you can begin to start modeling that up the chain as people go from members to chapter success coaches to managing directors or launch directors, and they graduate up the chain there. And so that becomes a celebration and a recognition of our progress. Another thing I would think that everyone in this industry is striving to do is to align the diversity and inclusion with our vision and mission statement, as well as our equality and non-discrimination / member safety and well-being statements. It's great to have those and to see that they exist. But if we start to integrate what we do in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion into that, we begin to see some organic growth and representation of within our workforce.
Yeah, I love it. I love that. That's fantastic. I think too, I mean, one of the conversations I had with some folks in who are higher level management in BNI is that, a lot of our recruitment actually comes from not from the outside, but from membership, right? And so I think I would be remiss if I did not mention launch, right? Because I lead launch the launch efforts here in the Northeast. And, and I have to also shout out LeBrent, because in Minneapolis, as he mentioned, where George Floyd happened, what's happening now in general, like kind of like the epicenter of what happened, a lot of like the injustices around, racial strife, if you will, has been happening there. And he managed somehow, some way during the Derek Chauvin trial to launch a chapter. And I think the majority are Black professionals. So I'm with you, Shalvar, in that we do have to launch more chapters in inner cities. We found out we didn't have one in Detroit, some other areas, at least within core, but really throughout the country. And I know Rachel Cherney, who's on our panel, who is the executive director of BNI Chicago has intently had made that intention of having chapters with more LGBTQ and Black business owners in certain places, right? In sort of the Black metropolis areas in Chicago. So, you know, seeing representation, and I think even back to what George said about the NFL, you know, most of the players are Black, right? But it's bizarre that there's no Black owners, right? So I find that that's interesting. So representation definitely does matter. And so hopefully people can walk away with this. Holly, hopefully we got your question sort of kind of answered.
Can I real briefly add to that real quick, Claudia? I know we're
Absolutely.
running out of time, but what Shaliver and George point out, specifically talking about African American, as I did, I launched in North Minneapolis, which is predominantly African American, and that's where I grew up, and that's why I wanted to launch the chapter. And I spoke to a lot of young business owners, and I mentor a lot of young African American men, and a lot of them just they don't understand it because they didn't grow up with it. I think if we're going to eventually get serious with this, if we really want to get diverse, and Claudia's talk about launch, we need to have some dedicated people, just like George is dedicated to doing global franchises. We need to have dedicated people who are willing to go to Detroit, Chicago, and some of these areas. If this is something serious, I know Graham had talked about his trip last year to Gary and what's going on. Well, unless you understand how to, you know, many of us know what it means to be bilingual, code switch. We know how to do that. You can't just go in some of these areas if you don't know, if you're not bilingual in a way. And I think we need people who are dedicated to this, just like I know here in Target and other major Fortune 500 companies, they have people who go to HBCUs. So I think if we're going to get intentional about that, we're going to have to dedicate people to that and making that come to pass. So I just wanted to throw that in.
Fantastic. I love it. Well, thank you so much. We might have had emoji drop off. Thank you all so much for this conversation. This was fantastic. I think that we would agree. I mean, the chat has been going crazy. For those of you watching, thank you so much for tuning in and being here with us live. We have these talks every month, every second Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Next month is Women's History Month, so we will have another amazing panel. Thank you so much to Moji, who I think dropped off because she's in Costa Rica, LeBrent, Shaliver, and George. Thank you all so much for your time. This was incredible. Definitely, if you also are on here, give yourself one CEU. If you're not a part of BNI and want to know more, definitely reach out to us. But thank you so much for your time, and we will see you all next month.